2019 was quite a decent year for comic book films. Well, maybe apart from these two. And to be honest, that as well. But the rest of the lineup wasn't too bad. The ones that stood out to me were obviously Endgame and of course Joker, which is what I'm going to be talking about today since the sequel just came out. As with most of these types of videos, I like to briefly talk about the lead up to the sequel, giving thoughts on the first movie and all the controversies or behind the scenes stuff that went on during production, so let's get into it. The first movie, directed by Todd Phillips, the guy who worked on these, follows Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who's a failed comedian who works as a party clown for hire. He also has a condition known as PBA, which causes involuntary and often uncontrollable outbursts of laughter or crying in response to situations that don't warrant such reactions. I'm sure I'm not the first to say this, but I thought it was a solid move from Todd Phillips to give the Joker that condition, grounding his iconic laugh in something tangible and realistic. It helps set this version apart from the others, making the laugh more than just a quirk. It becomes a part of his identity. But with that being said, I do understand why it didn't sit well with everyone. Then there's the fact that this Joker is completely different from what we're used to seeing. Typically, Joker is portrayed as this chaotic, larger-than-life villain, but here he's just an ordinary guy dealing with real struggles. The movie focuses more on the idea of what the Joker represents rather than making him the typical comic book villain we've seen before, and again, I get why that approach divided audiences. Speaking of which, there were a lot of controversies surrounding certain scenes due to the violent nature. Many critics felt the movie glorified violence, potentially inspiring unstable people to act in the same way. Todd Phillips defended the film, saying it focuses on making the audience feel the weight and implication of violence rather than glorifying it. But obviously, certain audiences and critics still felt some type of way, especially after what happened in Colorado during The Dark Knight Rises. But thankfully, as far as I know, nothing like that happened following Joker. With all that being said, I really enjoyed the movie and appreciated it even more for being its own thing, separate from everything else in the DCEU. It didn't need to tie into any previous movies, it just focused on what it needed to be, an entertaining standalone film that, in my opinion, ended decently. So why did we need a sequel? Oh, of course. So after watching the second movie, my thoughts haven't changed. I still think it was pointless. I mean, hearing about it being a musical didn't help the situation for me, but I thought that element could help give it its own unique identity and not rely too heavily on the success of the first one, if that makes sense. Seeing the trailer did spark some sort of interest. I don't mind musicals, but they're not something I'd usually be excited to spend money on and watch willingly. But I gave this a chance based on the first one, and I did enjoy it for what it was initially. But during that middle onwards was when things started to fall flat for me. It started to feel like it didn't really know where to go next, especially during major scenes. It didn't annoy me as much as Thor: Love and Thunder did in terms of how silly it got at times, but it definitely left an empty feeling when it ended, which further supported my thoughts of it being pointless. And I'm not gonna lie, this movie felt like Matrix 4 to me. I mean that in how the director didn't want to make another one initially, but ended up doing it because of studio pressures or whatever. So they churned out a disappointing final product on purpose. I mean, it has to be on purpose. I might be alone in thinking this, but Warner Brothers owns the IPs to both movies, so it can't be a coincidence. And don't get me wrong, I think the movie was still shot and acted well in my opinion. I just wasn't a fan of the direction they ended up taking. Even with the musical idea, I gave it a chance, but it didn't do anything that really stood out to me, apart from the few violent moments during some of the songs that caught me off guard a bit. I don't think there was that great of a connection between Joker and Harley. Their relationship even falls flat during the latter parts of the movie, which seemed pointless in the end for all that build-up. So overall, I'd rather just act as if this movie didn't even exist. The first one was great on its own. This movie didn't need to happen. And I might be wrong, but I think the box office numbers will reflect that. It is a shame because I did enjoy how this version of the Joker was portrayed, and I really did hope that this movie would at least expand the character and the world even further. But unfortunately, that's not what I got from it. Let me know down below what you thought about both movies and whether or not you agree or disagree with any of the points I made. Thanks so much for checking out the video if you made it this far into it, and please like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Anyway, that's all I've got for now, so I'll catch you in a bit.